News, current events, politics, and everything in between. This is your number one source for finding out the truth. Never censored, never apologetic, and always patriotic. You're tuned in to the Patriot Perspective with the people's proud patriot, Alan Lee.
Good morning, everybody. I know we're having so much fun. All right, let's see. You're on. Hello, Liz. I would love to hear your thoughts on Chelsea Handler's despicable comments to 50 Cent. I don't know about that.
I'm not aware of the comments. I know what 50 Cent said, but I'm not aware of that he was voting for Trump because Joe Biden's going to take all of his money.
Oh, right. Okay, I did hear about that. Okay. All right. What are your thoughts on Antifa and BLM?
So, Antifa obviously already being coined as a terrorist organization. I believe that BLM is the same. I believe that, it started off as a great hashtag with probably all well intentions, but it grew into something else. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things can grow into something that isn't good, and you still hold on to the core value of it. But the problem with BLM is you have half the people who are just the hashtag supporters who just really want people to be treated fairly. And then you have the organization that donates all their money to left-wing organizations, none of which have anything to do with African American people at all. You can go onto the website and look that up. And then the other problem with that is because they've become an organization, they don't denounce the activity that's being done under their name. They're quick to say that those people aren't a part of them and things like that. But when they're asked about the riots and the non-peaceful protests, they just throw it back and whitewash it and say, oh, well, the people are upset. So what do you expect them to do? They never really come out and say, hey, we're an organization. This is what we believe in. We do not want you to do these acts. This is wrong. Don't use our name. There's BLM official protests in all these different cities where this violence happens. Where are the leaders who are always on TV and always making statements, coming out and saying, don't use our name. Our name is registered trademark, copywritten. Don't use our name. You're doing things under a name. We are not about that. And the fact that they won't do that is what now has made BLM as a whole something that I can't get behind.
Right. I agree 100% with everything you said. At first, I was like, okay, you know what? That's cool.
Right.
And then it just went to hell. I don't know what happened. And then, like last night, for example, all the riots going on in Philly now, to bring the National Guard, and they're stealing televisions.
Right. Televisions and shoes.
How is that at all helpful to any group of people in this country?
Right. And it's not. And I mean, I don't even think with the Philly situation, I don't even think it was a BL. They're using that name, but there was no protest. There wasn't even a march. It was just people saw something and then took advantage of it. And sadly to say, the majority of it were people of color going out and looting and rioting. And the problem is I know I've spoke to some people who I won't give their names, but sadly, they don't agree with rioting and looting, but they excuse it because they believe that by doing so, it causes enough noise, and by causing noise, it causes officials to want to make changes. Now, that logic works, but the ends don't always justify the means. Mm-hmm. While, yes, if you're creating noise and you're saying that, here's a bunch of things you don't like happening and it's happening because of this, that can cause someone to make a change. But you don't do wrong to get a right result.
Right. And that's true. And my kind of comeback to people who defend the looting and rioting is, because you hear like, oh, people are really angry and they're sick and tired of it, and I can understand feeling that way.
Right.
But I don't understand the expression of it via violence and looting and destroying city blocks.
Right.
So if you would say, it makes sense to me that people would riot and loot, then I would say, then you're saying that it's okay if somebody, beats their wife and children, or, goes out and just assaults people because they're angry.
Right.
You can't just, there's laws, and there should be laws and rules being enforced, and there has to be boundaries and limits with behavior that hurts other people.
Right.
And, maybe you could argue that and say, yeah, well, we see it, the same thing happening on our side. Well, okay, but where is this getting anybody?
Right.
And you can't use the logic that violence is necessary when, if you would say that about the riots, you would have to say that about all violence.
Yep.
And it's terrible.
Especially with the hypocrisy, and I'm a real logical person, so everything has to make sense. Even if whatever your core value is, everything you do around it has to make sense logically.
Okay.
So if you believe that rioting and looting is okay because you're angry, then because of black lives not mattering, you say, then you should be paying just as much attention to whose stores you're looting and rioting. And if they're owned by black people, then you shouldn't be looting and rioting those. You shouldn't be blocking black traffic. You shouldn't be doing things in your own neighborhood. Why aren't you in the neighborhood of people that you believe are the ones who are oppressing you, and not in your own neighborhoods taking advantage of those ones and putting their businesses and their families at risk? So logically, you're still not even doing it. So then it comes out, well, if you're logically not caring about these black families in your neighborhood, that you're burning down their stores and things like that, then is it really about color, and is it really about black lives? Well, then obviously it's not. So now these people who are doing that are just using a situation and using someone's fear and using for their own gain, their own power trip to get something from someone else that they don't deserve, and to put someone else down because of it.
Right, and I always have said this on my show, if you really want to get into communities and make a difference, why don't you mentor? Why don't you volunteer? Why don't you get involved with organizations? Why don't you do your own, podcasts about things? So are you happy about I think this is for you, Alan, are you happy about the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett?
Oh, I'm ecstatic.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
right on.
yeah. I think that she's right for the job. As much as we all want certain things overturned and changed, I also believe in the rule of law and the Constitution. So if something comes across her desk, as much as I'd be like, oh, I hope that this evens out with the Constitution. If it doesn't, I also agree with ruling the right way, and I think that she would do that.
I do too. I trust her.
Yeah.
I think she's got quite. She's awesome. Yeah. What about, someone says they love your t-shirt.
Thank you.
Someone's asking, I would love to hear your thoughts on the whole Colin Kaepernick taking the knee situation.
Yeah, I believe that when it comes to matters of faith and your beliefs, that there can't really be a true separation. If he felt like he wanted to kneel during the national anthem, I think he's a scumbag. But, okay, whatever. But when the NFL starts to take stances on that, and when they start to involve those political things under their sports and under their business, I think that was wrong. But Colin Kaepernick was a sellout from the beginning. He was already failing in his status. And then after, he lost his job and he got the deal with Nike and he screwed that up, he put it in his new contract that he was trying to get another deal. He put in his new contract that he would agree to stand for the national anthems if he could get signed.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and that went under the radar a lot, but you can actually look that up. So that right there shows where his true mindset was at.
Money.
Yeah. He thought that he could make a lot of money off of it, and he might have. He who knows? He might truly feel like there's this systemic racism that I don't believe is truly going on right now. But he might truly believe that, but it was still a ploy, because otherwise you don't back down from your beliefs when it starts affecting you, especially when you come out and saying, I don't care how this is affecting me, I'm going to take a stand, and then you say, or maybe I want those millions of dollars again.
Changed my mind.
Yeah. So I think that's what the main problem is with him is. You can't force someone to stand for the national anthem. I think it's a huge disservice to our country. And if you want to do that and you take it out on, you use your position, everybody uses their position to speak their mind. So if there wasn't contracts ahead of time with NFL that you had to stand, then fine, take your knee, you're a scumbag, I don't support you. But to take it to the level that they did, and then the NFL to back, and then you had the NBA do the same thing, which I heard that they're taking the Black Lives Matter off their uniforms now, because they're chasing the dollar as well. When it made the money, they were all about it. Now that they're realizing it's not, they're against it. So that's my thoughts on Colin Kaepernick. I think he's a scumbag, and yeah.
All right, so you know exactly how you feel. Okay, let's see what else we have here. There's a good one. Oh yeah. Hi Lisa. Lisa Bruni Shirey asks, do you think that Planned Parenthood / abortion is inherently racist?
Oh yeah, of course. Margaret Sanger, her whole plan was to lower the population of African Americans. She believed that they needed to go back to their own country. She believed 100% in segregation, and she opened up Planned Parenthood to offer abortions. And the first ones she opened were in low-income housing areas, which were mostly African American and minorities. She was an outspoken racist. She did not hide it whatsoever. So, and everybody says, oh, it's family planning, and they offer all these services. They don't offer all those services. They outsource all those services. Their number one moneymaker has always been and will be abortion, unless there's something done about that. And if it was truly, they charge money for their abortions. They don't care about women's health. If they did, then they wouldn't have a problem with making sure that their facilities, number one, they had a real doctor in them. You don't have to be a real doctor in many states to actually perform abortions.
Really?
Right.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and when the pro-life movement put forth the bill where abortion clinics had to have admittance privileges at a hospital in case something went wrong with the woman, and this was before the whole born alive thing, so this was purely if something went wrong in an abortion and the woman needed real medical care, they had to have admittance privileges with the hospital. They fought it back against that because that would lower the amount of Planned Parenthood they could have open. They fought back when we pushed for a lot of the abortion clinics. The hallways weren't wide enough for a gurney, and so we wanted those ones to either be you change you remodel or you close that facility. Even if you open up somewhere else that is better, they push back against that. They don't care about the health of the woman. They don't offer services for anyone going through depression afterwards or any medical services afterwards. You would think that they would run the full gamut, not just push abortions. I mean, it took us forever to get legislation passed where they had to tell you that it was a human child and not just, they use the medical term fetus, which just means unborn child.
Right.
But they make themselves feel better by not saying unborn child. So, at first they didn't have to tell them anything. Like, oh, it's just a clump of cells. It doesn't look like anything. And then we pushed for legislation where now they're supposed to inform them of that. And it's always just been a money thing. And again, Margaret Sanger, she hated people of color. You can look up on YouTube. Hopefully it's still out there. The original cartoon Planned Parenthood commercial. And it wasn't a TV commercial. It's what they used to show in schools in black communities. And just look it up. It's the most racist thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Yes.
Okay. Well, make sure we do that. And maybe I'll even post it. Let me see what else we have that's kind of different. Chelsea Handler went on Twitter and said she had to remind 50 Cent that he is black and cannot vote for President Trump. I heard that. I did hear about that.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
I wonder what he said back to that.
I know, we're gonna look it up. Corinne, welcome, Corinne Sabrina. I don't think I've ever seen
Corinne.
you on Liz Live before. Good morning and welcome. Why do you think organizations like Under Armour and NFL keep giving money to BLM, even though BLM have yet to spend any of it in any positive way to help black communities?
So my take on that is that if you look at their commercials, I mean, Under Armour, not so much. They're kind of middle of the road when it comes to the diversity in their commercials, different races and things like that. The NFL, while it's widely diverse, they market to the black community. Nike markets to the black community. And I think that's where it is. Everyone's so afraid of cancel culture, of being told that if they don't support something that they're racist, that they jump on board to do so, even if they might not agree with anything they're doing,
right.
But they have a multi-billion-dollar industry to run, and if they do that, then they won't be attacked. Because sadly, the second that the media, if CNN came out and said the NFL was racist, they take a big hit.
Yeah.
And so I think that they try and get ahead of the tornado.
I agree. I mean, I really do. So, we're a little bit overtime, which is fine. It's not like I have to stop at an hour, but we're having so many, and I still have more questions to ask you. So maybe we'll just have to have you back. Good morning, Liz Lab viewers. What is happening? Let's see what we have going on here. Good morning. We cannot start the show until we see that T-shirt. Okay, Alan, they want to see your CNN is fake news. Use the best T-shirts. Okay. Justin Farabot, I got a huge question. Here in PA on November 4th, Governor Wolf said there was 1 million votes to count then on Thursday morning. The 5th, he said that on the 5th, he then said there was 2 million votes to count. Can anyone enlighten me on this?
So that's been one of the things that the president speculated on, and Donald Trump Jr. spoke about, where they don't know why he would have had that information to say it, why the information continued changing, and then why all the votes that did come in all went to Biden overnight. So no one knows where he got that number from. No one knows why the voting count stopped in the first place. I mean, it's a presidential election.
Yeah.
I believe you're supposed to work through the night.
I would think so. I thought that was very shady.
Yeah. So, I don't have much information on exactly why that was said, where his information came from, and why the number jumped. And that is something that the Trump team has been looking into.
Okay. Thank you very much, Justin, for that question. Voter fraud is nothing new. We will all know that this has been going on for as long as we have been voting. The big difference here is President Trump and the Democrats' blatant arrogance. They took it way too far. This is just what President Trump needed. Hold on, let me see if I can get the rest of your comments. To expose this corruption.
Yeah.
Definitely. Someone explain to me what the argument is for not having voter ID. Good question.
So it depends on which side of the aisle you're on. There's no argument on the right side of the aisle. And on the left side of the aisle, the initial argument that was kind of hidden under a pile of candy was they wanted the illegals to vote.
Right.
And if they had, it would discourage them from voting if they used their ID. Now, initially, since they couldn't come out and say that, what they tried to say is people who are minorities, that would prevent them from voting. And there was a big street team that went out and started asking minorities in New York City and things like that. First, they said that they wouldn't know where the voting polls were. They didn't have internet access, and they wouldn't have IDs. So they're pretty much saying the black community and the Spanish, and Puerto Rican and all the different minorities that we have here are broke, poor, and stupid. So they went out on the streets of New York and they asked random, minorities, do you know where the voting place is? And they say, yeah. Do you know where the library is? Yeah. Do you have internet? Yeah, I have it on my phone. Do you have an ID? Sure, I have one right here. So that was the excuse they were using.
Wow,
that
I did
actually
not know
convinced
that.
a lot of people, the idiots out there who just listen to media, that, oh yeah, we can't do IDs because it'll prevent people from voting. But they had no real good reason. The real reason is that they wanted illegal votes to be able to go through. At the time when when Trump was pushing for IDs, that was the time when everybody was flocking to America and trying to cross the borders, and that's what they wanted. They wanted them all here so they could get the votes, and they knew they wouldn't have IDs to do so.
Wow. You heard it here from Alan Lee, Patriot Perspective. We're going to make sure you know how to get to his show. It's not about supporting any particular candidate. This is about the integrity of our election process. If anyone is saying there's no fraud going on, they are lying to you and themselves. Honestly, it's that they don't care if there's fraud. They just want Trump out by any means. Absolutely. I couldn't, yeah.
Yeah.
100% right, Tara Lee. That's right. If Biden wins or Trump wins, let it be fair and unjust. Can we get your thoughts on these fact checkers on Facebook?
Block them. Go into your Facebook settings, go into privacy, then go under block list, and just start typing in fact. Some of it's spelled properly, so fact, and then check 2 separate words. Some of it's together. Some of it's FAC. Just start typing that in there, and just every day block all of the fact checkers.
They're all BS anyway. They're
Right.
all garbage. In fact, someone tried to fight me the other day with a fact checker article on the history of Robert Byrd. And first she told me she called Trump a racist. And I said, well, I've never seen him be a racist. I don't know that to be true, but I do know that Joe Biden is. And I showed her, so I sent her the video, the actual video of Joe Biden eulogizing Robert Byrd as one of the greatest men who ever lived. And I know that I read a lot about Robert Byrd. So she tells me, no, that's a lie. He didn't do it. I said, but here's the video. It's right here.
Right.
You can see it. So she ignored that. And then she gave me a fact check that said that he wasn't the Grand Wizard. No, he wasn't. He was the Grand Cyclops.
Right.
Whatever the hell that means, I don't know. But he started back in the 40s. He started the first chapter of the KKK in West Virginia. He recruited 150 people
For the Democratic Party.
for the Democratic Party, and they told him, "Oh, you're so good at recruiting people. You should run for office." And she said, "Oh, the fact check article said that Robert Byrd denounced the KKK in the 40s." And I'm like, "No, that's when he was getting started. He never said anything about
He
it."
may have announced it
Yeah,
in the 40s.
yeah. And I said, "No, actually, in his own autobiography, he says that it wasn't until the late 80s, early 90s that he was willing to denounce it."
Right.
So these fact check articles are BS,
Yes.
and they're being used by people who don't know what they're talking about to try and prove themselves as right.
Yeah, and one of the, there's the idea of fact checking. Obviously, the idea is a great thing. The problem is all the fact checkers are doing one of two things. They're either lying about the facts, or if one thing might be wrong, like the Grand Wizard, when they put the fact check in, especially for Facebook, since it grays out the whole thing, you have to see what was posted and why it was fact checked. It hides the truth and it blows up the one thing that was wrong. So then it makes you not want to believe it. So I posted on the Patriot Perspective the video of a Michigan woman who had a Sharpie incident with the Sharpie pens.
Yeah.
And Facebook fact checked my video and said that it was. They didn't say that didn't happen. They said that the machines are made to be able to read them. It said that story was not proven. So it didn't say that it was wrong, but they had the fact check
Wow.
overlay and everything on there. So then I had people telling me that it's not true, that this and that worked, and then it came out that yes, the machines are made to read the Sharpie pens, and most of the time it does work, but there are errors sometimes. And they're working to figure out which ones had an error so the person can get their vote counted and get it all done right. So why fact check something when either A, it's not proven to be wrong, and you have no reason to think it's wrong
Right.
other than just wanting to believe that it's not right. And B, why make it such a, when Facebook does it, they make it so obvious that when you're scrolling, you see it and you automatically think that it's a lie. Some people don't even watch it after that because you have to click through, a couple steps
Right.
in order to see what the video is. You say, oh, this is fact check, that's wrong, I'm just gonna keep scrolling. And that's the other problem with the fact checkers is that they're not just pointing out something that's completely wrong.
Right.
They're making, it appear that probably the whole thing's wrong. And then half the time they have no reason to say it's wrong or right. So then you're supposed to leave it alone. Until something comes up that says it's wrong, leave it alone.